Mark, thank you again for joining me today. It's been always my pleasure to communicate, share the knowledge, and share the experience that we're both very passionate about, that we share day to day, which is real estate, but the reality of real estate. Let's talk real reality. When someone calls and says to me or to you, hey, Mark, someone in the family passed, whether it's a mother, father, sister, brother, someone who is a husband, a child, God forbid, but someone who passed and they owned a piece of property, whether it's an apartment, condo, or a house, and they now need to, not really want to, but need to sell for many, many different reasons. You know, you and I know holding on to the property that's vacant, having it insured in a way that someone used to live there, and now it's vacant, it becomes a completely different scenario for insurance companies. God forbid anything happens, and the neighbors will tell, hey, there was nobody living there for a year, the property wasn't sold, nobody is around, nobody's coming to visit. Let's talk a little bit more about this type of situations. How do you handle it? What's the most important thing you and I look out for? And what is the most valuable information that we hear, I guess, when somebody says, I'm appointed executor of the estate? Let's dive into that part.
Sure. So first of all, I think it's very important to just kind of frame the conversation in the sense of when someone is reaching out to you in that type of moment, you have to be it's a very emotional time in a person's life. Like you said, someone passed away. They had a certain connection to that, whether it was a house or co-op, somewhere, you know, their grandmother lived there or whatever, they grew up there. And now this is kind of, they don't live here anymore or whatever it is. And they're looking to sell this property. So it's a very emotional time. So first and foremost, I think we just have to be, coming from that perspective. Now, with regards to the underlying documents that are very necessary in order for us to determine what the next steps are, is we need to get a copy of the deed if it's a house or a copy of the stock certificate if it's a co-op, because those documents will indicate who the rightful owner of that property is and who has the right to act on behalf of the person who passed away. Now, oftentimes, people have an idea of who kind of really owns it or who has control over it, but we need to kind of be certain, so we always ask for those documents. Now, if the deed is in both names, say, for example, husband and wife, husband predeceased, and it was a joint tenant deed, so we definitely need to understand what the transition of ownership, how that happened. But so we definitely need the copy of either the stock certificate or the deed. We need the death certificates just to ascertain exactly who passed away. And like you mentioned, if there's been an executor appointed or an administrator appointed. Now, these are very technical terms, right? An executor or an administrator, and that happens through surrogate's court. There needs to be a petition that's filed with surrogate's court. Someone needs to step into the shoes of the person who passed away, and someone has to act as the fiduciary appointed in order to act on behalf of the person that died in order to, wind down and close up the estate. Now, so that's why those are the first things that we look at. And then after we have a better sense of what is really going on, we can then direct this transaction. We can tailor our contracts to reflect certain things. I mean, you and I have been multiple times on transactions where there was no appointed administrator or executor at that point, but nonetheless, we were still able to enter into a contract subject to someone being appointed within the interim. It's all a balancing act, right? So thank God, we've done this so many times. We kind of know how to guide our clients through the process. And if again, it comes down to if you know what to expect and what the other side expects, you can definitely guide your clients accordingly to get this resolved in a timely and effective manner for everyone involved.
Beautiful. Mark, at what point after reviewing documents do you realize that it's not your level of specialty or it's not your part of the legal end of it to handle? At what point to kind of like shift and direct them into a referral of?
Sure. So I think also it's very critical for any professional to know what they're good at and what they're not good at, right? What their capabilities are, what is it that they don't focus on. I think someone who's a jack of all trades is not really someone who, I think someone needs to be a specialist in the specific field that they're working in. And if there needs to be some type of a petition that needs to be done with surrogate's court, or some type of an action that needs other outside guidance and counsel, we've worked multiple times with specific estate attorneys that deal with that particular aspect, and we have no issues, referring business and working with other attorneys, because these estate attorneys refer real estate business to us on a regular basis too, and it's, and we work hand in hand on getting, the necessary documents for that client in order to be able to effectively get what it is that we need in order to close this deal.
Yeah, well, very interesting topic and subject. We can talk about it all day long. I recently had a situation where I didn't know that this could even exist. So there was a father who called and wanted to sell the house. It was a true story in Jamaica States. So as soon as we get to the home, the son was there, the father was there, and we are sitting down and talking. And within the conversation, as we trying to kind of like open up the situation to understand better and better on the deeper level where they stand and why they really need to sell and what's the story, we discovered that the mother passed away. She was having a sickness that was not curable. And then I think prior to her passing, husband and wife went to an attorney and they created a trust in a way that the husband didn't probably understand and know that gave him the ability to be able to live in the house as long as he's alive, but he could not sell because it was written in a way that he couldn't enjoy the money. Can you dive into that a little bit more? Because I was like absolutely devastated on behalf of the husband, who then married another lady, and they both thought, oh my God, we're going to sell the house, we're going to have a beautiful life, we're going to move on, we're going to travel the world and enjoy the money. And the truly is, they worked very hard. And, when the wife passed, he then remarried, but then the whole chaos started with this home. And how the trust was put together, that's what pretty much the highlight of where I'm going.
Sure. So what you're referencing right now is this concept called the life estate, which means a person has the right to live in a specific property to enjoy the benefit of that house during their life. But once they pass away, they have nothing to kind of give or to their children, and the life estate doesn't really have much value except to the person who's living in and enjoying the house. Now, when the wife created a trust that way, maybe she did foresee the potential or possibility of the husband potentially, remarrying,
being protected
or
from children being
exactly
able to sell and throw him out.
Right, exactly. So that's why she and maybe ultimately her goal was to make sure that the husband has the right to live in a specific house for the entirety of his life. But the asset or the value of the house, she wanted to, the legal term is called revert, but basically to go back to the children effectively. That's who it would ultimately the value of the asset would go back to after the husband passed away. So look, there are multiple different types of trusts. A trust could be a very wonderful item. I think a lot of people maybe misunderstand exactly what a trust is, or they're maybe, they're worried, or they think a trust is something that it's really not, right? People sometimes have these grandiose ideas of that, a trust can do this and do that. There are definitely clear benefits to what a trust is, but a trust also has limitations, and there's pluses and minuses. So again, it's very important to adequately understand what the goals of your client is. And another thing I think that you mentioned, and I kind of wanted to just spend a couple of minutes on that, is the goals of a client can shift, right? Because when a client comes to you at one moment in time, their goal can be such and such, right? And then, life happens, things evolve, and then their goals change, right? And then certain things are not the way that they envisioned anymore. So then, and I always tell my clients, because they always ask me, Mark, what would you do? Or what are your thoughts? Or, I'm not a fortune teller. I have no idea, what the future is going to hold, how your particular situation or circumstances are going to evolve. But given what you're telling me now, these are your options, and ultimately the decision, is yours as to how we want to structure certain things. And that's basically, I think, kind of the general, sum and substance of what it is that we have to kind of take into consideration.
Well, amazing. There's so much information that we are covering right now. Another scenario I just recently had. It was kind of like also painful to digest because we already had the listing signed. We already had the house put on the market. But when it comes to like very complex situations like that, I never think about the money at the moment. I always think about the benefit for a client.
Right.
And I really hate and don't want to see my clients get to the closing table and be surprised with information that they didn't foresee. Like, client doesn't come to you and say, you know what, my husband passed away, we have a trust. The trust is, let's say it's my children's that are handling the trust. I am the wife, I am still living in the house. What happens if we sold the house right now?
So I think the more information you have up front, the better everyone is.
Absolutely.
So that's why I think it's very important to review the trust document ahead of time, because again, you know that this is something that the title company is going to review. This is something that the purchaser is going to review. So why go through that whole process and then kind of be halfway, have to start all over again, where on the contrary, you can prepare effectively, know what it is that you have and what you can do, and that way effectively, tailor the deal to get to an effective solution as soon as possible. And sometimes an effective solution may be to not do anything.
Right.
Or
this was the case for my case.
Exactly, and that is a possibility. You and I, we were also talking off record a little bit before. Sometimes it's not in a client's best interest to sell because of capital gains taxes or something along those lines. So that very well may be the case as well. But I think having a competent professional take a look at the documents to guide you in the proper direction is a must, and you have to do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, later, correct. Yes. Well, this is what I like to do usually. I like to dive deep into their personal situations from the very, very beginning, because it's the last thing we want is to waste our time or to invest our precious time with clients that will not benefit anything in the end, and or will be surprised in the end without having the knowledge of the tremendous taxes. And this is exactly what could have happened with my client if we wouldn't do the right thing from the very beginning. They would probably pay close to $300,000 to $400,000 in taxes alone, where we decided that it's best for her to stay in the home, rent out the house and keep the house until, she is, departed from this life. And then the children will be benefiting because, interestingly enough, children will benefit more than we do, right? And, once you pass, the house is left to the children, and then out of nowhere, they have up to $5 million in that.
Yeah, so you're talking about a different type of tax now. You're talking about, estate taxes and then capital gains taxes potentially, right? So yes, there is this concept known as step up in basis with regards to, because we come across these transactions all the time. Mom, dad, grandfather, grandmother bought a house, 50 years ago, 30 years ago, where the value of the house was substantially less than what the market value of it is now. And if people, transfer it while they're alive or do something or sell it, they may be there may be different types of taxes that are in play, such as capital gains taxes. And if that's the case, some of these capital gains taxes, like you mentioned, could be in the hundreds of thousands. So that's why currently there is this still concept of step up in basis, where when a person passes away, the value of the property that goes to their heirs would be the value not at the time they bought, but at the time they passed away, which
right.
You get a huge
value,
exactly, increase in that basis, and you can save substantial amount of money in capital gains taxes potentially.
Yeah, well, this is what we deal with a lot. Majority of what we do is just provide information to our clients, educate them, and really make them feel comfortable and understand that we here as professionals here to guide them, educate them, and really take them to the level where if they are ready, willing, and able to sell, that we will pretty much look into each individual case, look at each individual circumstances and situation, and really give them the direction of, yes, that's a perfect candidate to be on the market, or this is probably not. And we are super duper honest with them, because in the end of the day, I think of my clients as my walking and talking billboards. I enjoy when I get phone calls from my, referrals when they say, oh, you got recommended by somebody who really told me that they were very comfortable sending your information over, that you could take great care of us. And this is the goal behind it all, that we here to support and help all our listeners, all our clients to be, and all our past clients, those that are in a position that potentially may be looking to, upgrade or downsize, move to a different state, and pretty much just give them value day to day so they go to us as a go-to resource for all things real estate. So Mark, it's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for joining me today again, and I can't wait for our next discussions.
As always, a pleasure. It's always wonderful getting different perspectives, especially from you. You're such a, your personality just exudes out. You're always very positive and optimistic. So thank you very much for hosting me on this show. And I think, once again, this would be very valuable to your clients. Anyone have any questions with regards to a real estate transaction? Again, feel free to reach out to us. Our office number, once again, is 212-888-8899. That's 212-888-8899.
Thank you, Mark.
My pleasure. Till next time.